Hello everyone, I'm Mike from blackdesert.com and today we are going to briefly review the playable classes of the second closed beta, the play style of each class and the most important skills of each class. So, let's begin with the Ranger. The Ranger class has the highest speed compared to all other classes. She has very high single target physical attack but low physical and magical defense. Obviously, she uses bow and the best way to attack is of course from distance. Since Ranger has low defense, the player needs to take advantage of the high yield of the class. Spins and backflips need to be done again and again by pressing the shift key in order to keep distance from the enemy or to avoid attacks. Even monsters of the same level can do significant damage to you. A good Ranger will always keep distance and will not let you lay a single attack on him. But be careful with the monsters, because if you go too far away from the initial position, the monster will gain full HP and run back to his spawn position. So, the main aspect of the unique style of the Ranger is to keep distance from the enemies, and if you are playing with a party, do not get aggro and kill the enemies as fast as possible with the high damage skills. The secondary attack of the Ranger is kicks. Kicks do not output high damage, but they make the opponents feel dizzy, which leads to a small stun. It is a good idea to learn few kicks when the monster comes close to you before you start gaining some distance. Kicks will make the monster feel dizzy and you will be able to get some distance without the monster following you. The main weapon of the Ranger is the bow, but she has a dagger as a secondary weapon. Using the dagger you can do rapid attacks but with very low damage. The damage is actually so low that the dagger turns out to be rather useless. We hope that will change on the release of the game and the secondary weapon of the Ranger will be more useful and do more satisfactory damage. Now let's see the most important skills of the Ranger. One of the most useful skills is the Tear Breathshot. This is one of the most powerful skills of the Ranger. You can learn that skill pretty early in the game and it's very good to start with in order to kill a monster, especially if you start by hitting from behind. Keep in mind that as long as you are charging the skill, your stamina goes down. If your stamina runs out completely, the skill will not be triggered. Windblade is another important skill of the Ranger. This skill is not to do damage but to stun the enemy. Of course, the chance rate is not 100% for the stun to land, but if you are playing Ranger and you are soloing, you will definitely use it a lot. Will of the Wind is the area attack damage skill of the Ranger. It does not do great damage like the Tear Breathshot, but it can hit massive enemies. Land of Bondage is another skill like Windblade. It does not do stun, but it roots the enemy to the ground. The enemy is still free to hit you as long as you are in his range, which means the monster is not immobilized completely. It just can't run. But to be honest, the skill Windblade is better. It's harder to miss and it does some damage, unlike the Land of Bondage, which it does not do any damage at all. Now let's see some combinations of skills. All classes have combo skills and all the skills at the bottom of your skill window are the combination skills. If you have not learned the combo skill, you can't do combo no matter if you use the same order of the skills that the combo skill requires. This combination, for example, is to take some distance from the enemy while at the same time it holds the monsters and does an area attack damage. Except from all these, it also have high chance to knock down the enemy. Here is another combination of skills. This combo skill is to make the enemy feel dizzy and at the same time will push the player back. This combo skill is very good if you consider the high speed you are doing it and the high damage. Have in mind that your energy points are not going down as long as you use the combo skill, but if you use the second skill separately, you will see that your energy points go down. Unfortunately, we do not know if that was a bug of the closed beta or this is how it will work later on the release of the game. Also, almost all of combination skills can knock down or at least push back the enemy. By doing combination of combo skills, these chances of course are increasing. Now let's change to the Giant class, the Predator. The Giant race is the slowest race compared to all other races. He has a lot of HP and a lot of physical defense, but his big and heavy body does not let him be agile in order to avoid any incoming attacks like the ranger. That means the only thing he can do is to let the monster hit him at the same time hitting them back. Because he is huge and holds two axes, almost all of his skills do damage to multiple enemies at once. The main playstyle of the giant is pretty simple. I believe you don't need to have any extreme skills as a player to play him. Don't misunderstand me, for all classes you need to have some skill to play them, but the giant needs less. His big amount of HP and his big physical defense is making him durable enough to go against multiple enemies. The only thing he has to do is to lure many monsters, go to a corner and start killing them all together with his skills or even simple attacks. By pressing the F key with the giant, you can grab the opponent. That leads to knock down the enemy every time you grab him. Because of that, note that there is a cooldown for the grab skill, so you can't spam it all the time. Because the giant is huge, he can even jump when you use the grab skill in order to do more damage and hit the surrounding enemies at the moment he smacks the ground. Now let's see some attacks and skills of the giant race. Here you can see the spin attack. You can do the spin attack just by pressing right or left while you're hitting. It is not actually a skill, you don't even need to learn it from the skill master. It's quite strong, fast and very efficient. Next is the fierce attack. This is the first skill that you will learn as you're playing with a giant, and you can do it just by pressing right click. Unfortunately, it does not do efficient damage, and in order to hit multiple enemies, they need to be really close together. Here is the Sovereign Rock. This is a charge skill. It does not cover long distance, but there is a high chance to knock down the enemy. It is pretty good when you find a group of enemies and charge them like this. The Thunder Bear Split does really nice damage, and the great thing about this skill is that you will learn it pretty early in the game. Except the satisfactory damage, this skill also shock or knocks down the enemy. The Destruction of 4 Fortalices is one of the area damage attack skills of the giant. The only thing you have to do is to gather a lot of monsters together and then use the skill till your energy runs out. The nice thing about this skill is that you can do it by pressing back and right click, and then if you press right and left click together, you will get a path which increases physical attack damage for 5 seconds. Giant will use his huge body and big weight for his advantage. Here's the Predator's hunting. He is jumping and crushing the enemy with his big body. The radius that does the damage is pretty big, and there's high chance to knock down the enemy. Well, we know any character can do a back attack when you are hitting an enemy at his back. If you got a skill like the giant who's smashing the ground, you can also do a down attack when the enemy is knocked down. Now let's move to the fighter. The fighter class does not have the role of a tank. He just has the shield in order to protect himself and anyone who stands behind him. He does not have the guild of the archer in order to avoid any damage, so he needs to use his shield very often to block any incoming attack. He can also do grab attacks like the giant. First, we need to clarify that the fighter does not have the role of a tank. He does not have the super defense in order to aggro a lot of monsters and keep the aggro in order to protect everyone else. He has a shield and he can defend himself or anyone who stands behind him only. Therefore, his main playstyle will be to see the enemy's attack and put his shield up at the right time in order to block any threat. Of course, he can use the shift key like every class in order to do rolls, but not as fast like the ranger, making his playing style with the shield unique. We need to say that also he is a great fighter with one-handed sword. His attacks looks really strong and his intentions are to kill and not to play defensively. His shield is not just for defense, but it is his secondary weapon. Notice that as long as you keep your shield up, your stamina is not regenerated, and if you walk with your shield up, your stamina runs out. If you are playing defensively, you have to keep in mind your stamina all the time, especially if you have the role to protect someone. If your stamina runs out completely, you cannot defend yourself, or you can't roll down on the ground to avoid any damage. This means if your stamina runs out completely, there is no way to avoid any incoming damage. Also, your stamina will go down in every successful block you make, and in each successful block you will gain 3 buffs. One for physical defense, one for defense against arrows, and one for magical defense, for 5 seconds each. Unlike the ranger, the kicks of the fighter consume stamina. You can't do as many kicks you want. His kicks are quite stronger than the ranger, but they are slower. Unlike the ranger again, you will not use kicks with the fighter so much, and the reason is that you need to keep that stamina to use it with the shield. Now, let's see some skills of the fighter class. Here is the Sting Rush. It's a nice aggressive charging skill. It's pretty good if you want to get closer distance, especially if you are PvPing with other classes which needs to keep distance, like the Ranger or Sorcerers. Also, this skill is shocking the enemy. Bunk is the area attack skill of the fighter. It does not do any extreme damage, but it will hit everyone who is close in front of you. Poised Strike Back is a very good skill. Not only does great damage, but when your character moves back in order to increase his force, it can lead you to avoid any incoming attack if you do it with the right timing. The fighter was the only class in the closed beta which actually had a lot of skills for his second weapon. Some skills were mandatory to have a shield in order to use them. For example, the Sound of Battle. This skill was to call the enemy to you. Unfortunately, we don't know if that skill will also take the aggro from another player in order for the fighter to be considered a little bit as a tank class. Deep Sting is a skill which the fighter attempts to pierce the enemy with his sword. The damage is efficient, and if the enemies are standing in front of you in a straight line one behind the other, it will hit all of them. This skill will shock the enemy and push them a little bit away from you. Vacuum Shield is a rapid charge in order to smash the enemies with your shield. This skill will shock the enemies and it will make the enemy a little bit confused. It's very good to do it in multiple enemies, but you have to keep in mind that the range is very small. Necessary Shield is the shield stun of the fighter. A strong hit with his shield will stun the enemy for a few seconds. It's wise when you do the stun to move on the back of the enemy in order to do back attack. Now we will move to our final class, the Sorcerers. Sorceress has similar playstyle with the Ranger class. She has low defense and avoiding damage is one of her main priorities. Most of her skills are to shock or to stun her enemies while in the same time doing high damage. Her skills are for both single and multiple targets, and a skilled player can easily go against many enemies at the same time. Everyone when they hear the name Sorceress, they have in mind a wizard that fights with spells from distance. Sorcerer is not like that. Her main weapon is a melee type weapon. Her main attacks are melee, but she got skills which she can cast them from big range. Since she has low defense like the Ranger, she has to avoid any incoming attack by pressing the shift key. She has a small type of teleport in order to avoid any damage, which with that she can gain some distance easily if need to. If you are pressing the shift key always at the right timing, you can kill a dozen of monsters without taking any hit at all. Her secondary weapon is just a range attack. It does not do good damage, but it's useful when you don't have much HP and you really need to keep some distance. If you are low in health and a monster knocks you down, it probably will be the end of you. Now let's see some of her skills. Dark Young Yeok is an area attack skill that does plus damage, and you can do it by pressing back and left click. It does a small push back effect, and you can keep doing it till your mana runs out completely. Target Shadow is one of the most well-known skills of the Sorceress. It is a black beam which hits all the targets that are connected to it. It does a nice damage, but it keeps draining your mana points quite fast. Fear of Contagion is a very nice area attack skill, which makes the enemy confused for a few seconds. See that on the human type monsters are confused for a few seconds, but on the stone type monsters that mind trick spell doesn't work on them. Raven Flame is another area attack skill which electrifies the enemy. That electrocution leads to a small stun to the enemy. Area attack stuns always are useful, no matter if you're playing solo or with party. For the skill Dreams of Destruction are not much to say. It is one of the strongest skills of the Sorceress. It does high damage and there is a high chance to knock down the enemy. It's very useful, but you need few seconds to charge the skill before you cast it. Condensed Dark skill is just your range attack but a bit more powerful. You can do it by pressing back and right click and it is shocking the enemy. In PvP it's great skill in order to cancel a channeling skill of the enemy. The skill Darkness Unleashed can be done by pressing back and the F key or front and the F key. By pressing back and the F key, it hits the monster and pushes you back in order to get some distance. By pressing front and the F key, she puts more force to the attack and instead of pushing you back, it knocks down the enemy. This skill has two stances, defensive and offensive, depending if you press in the back key or the front key. This was a brief review of 4 playable classes of the second closed beta of Black Desert Online. If you wish to join our community, feel free to register to our fan-made forums. You can find the link in the description below. If you liked our video, please subscribe to our channel and stay tuned because more videos will come before the next beta. Goodbye and thanks for watching.